Chapter 3 The Hero Speech. The house was deserted when I got home. After depositing my backpack and books on the kitchen table, I took the tape recorder into Mr. Roebuck's room and closed the door. A shaft of late afternoon sunlight cut across the black and tan spread. The room was different now, and not just because Aunt Queenie had vacuumed the tobacco specks and cellophane from the carpet and stacked the newspapers and magazines into a pile. The difference was in me, in my opinion of her father. I thought of the sniper's bullet ripping through his face, his will to live when he saw those Nazi jackboots crunching through the broken glass, the bleeding when he tried to chew, the raw egg sliding down his throat. Mrs. Bagby was right. Many moving stories of war had never been printed in the history books. I walked over and studied the triangle-shaped arrangement of photos and certificates on the wall. On the top row were 3 8x10s in black and white, half a dozen young men in fatigues gathered around a jeep, a soldier cleaning his rifle, that same soldier with his arms slung loosely over Orvis Roebuck's shoulders. Under the glass in this photo was a button stamped U.S. Army. On the second row hung the certificates and medals with a bronze star and the Purple Heart. A lump came to my throat. Before today, war had been something that didn't have much to do with me. Now I ached for Mr. Roebuck, who'd fought the battles and felt the fear and been scarred by memories and a sniper's bullet. Below the medals was a color photograph of Master Sergeant Roebuck in full army dress. His solemn expression was fitting because his backdrop was the American flag he'd fought to defend. I turned around. My swan was still on the dresser, caught now in a beam of sunlight. Thanks to Sergeant Roebuck, my pretty bird, once broken, was all mended and ready to soar. I smiled. I'd once seen the swan as wasted hours, wasted work. Now I saw it as a happy mistake. Slowly, I walked to the closet, my eyes on Uncle Sam. He was guarding the duffel bag, his stern glance saying, "Don't touch it." The closet smelled the same, of cedar and dust and old metal. When I saw the lumpy canvas bag slumped against the wall, I thought of a dead man on a bloody mattress. I wasted no time pulling the bag's drawstring and shoving the recorder in beside the helmets. I whipped the door shut and leaned against it, but jumped away when I remembered Uncle Sam. I slept hard and woke up early, in time to hear the Star-Spangled Banner on the radio. "Up, dummy!" I hauled myself out of bed, my mind on Sergeant Roebuck. He didn't think he was a hero, but I certainly did, and I intended to tell him so after school. I even rehearsed a hero speech in the shower. By 6:15, I was all dressed up with no place to go. It was too early to eat breakfast and too early to walk to Avenel's. The time was right to finish carving Joey's bear. With an awl, I etched lines to represent stitching on the fabric of the paws, and I made tiny holes beside the mouth to represent whiskers. With a spoon gouge, I deepened the grooves under the arms, and I took a sliver off one ear. At last, the carving was as good as I could make it. The bear looked up at me with its one pale wooden eye, and I felt a little glow of pride. Sergeant Roebuck, his face puckered in concentration, was scratching inside his cast with the hook of a coat-hanger. When he saw me in the doorway, he stopped scratching and grinned. "Hello, girlie, come on in." I suddenly felt all flustered and tongue-tied, unable to remember the speech I'd been practicing off and on all day. "I, don't want to bother you." "No bother, come in, take a load off." Sitting down didn't help my thinker. I fidgeted in the chair. "What's wrong, girlie? Is it Queen? Did she find the gizmo?" "No, that's not it." "Then what's wrong? What's on your mind?" "You and the war." Sergeant Roebuck frowned. "It was all that blubbering I did yesterday. Sorry, girlie. Remembering got to me." "It wasn't the blubbering. I did some of that myself." "Well then, what is it you came to say?" "That you were, brave. You enlisted the same as Leo, when you could have stayed on the farm staring at the rear end of a blamed old mule." "Some hero speech. Whoopee. Girlie, I was scared in my mind from the time I boarded that ship in the English Channel until they flew me out of France." "Who wouldn't be? Wherever Leo did his fighting, I'll bet he was scared too." "I wouldn't know," said the sergeant as he picked lint off the bedspread. "Didn't see him until we were both shot up and stuck in that filthy hospital. I was in no shape to ask, and he never said." "But he was a human being. Didn't he run like the devil that night you boys painted that cow green?" Sergeant Roebuck shot me a look of surprise. "I didn't mean that as an insult to Leo," I said hastily. "I just meant that after he saved your life, he might have gotten bigger in your eyes." "I know, girlie, and it's strange. You and I seem to be of the same mind. Since yesterday, I've been looking at things from a different perspective, doing a little soul-searching, too. I told you Leo was sneaking those eggs out of the kitchen. The truth is, he was stealing those eggs from the Nazis. He was stealing to save my life, but he was stealing just the same. It gave me pause, to borrow a phrase from Queen, Made me think I've been a little rough on that Shackelford fellow. Maybe he was stealing because his kids were hungry. He didn't steal at all. He thought he was helping some guys move furniture. And if the police still consider him a suspect in those robberies, they're barking up the wrong tree. One corner of Sergeant Roebuck's mouth turned up and then the other until he was wearing his regular lopsided smile. Sounds to me like you're sold on the man, or maybe it's the boy Tree. Both, I admitted as heat rushed to my cheeks. If Sergeant Roebuck noticed my discomfort, he didn't let on. Well, he said, as of today, I'm turning over a new leaf. It's time for me to stop passing out the judgment and lend a hand, help the turtle off the fence post, so to speak. I've even thought of a way to do it. How? By letting your Mr. Shackelford use my wills while I'm laid up. I caught my breath. Your little red truck? It's the only truck I've got. He looked away from me as if embarrassed himself now. Focusing on the cast, he poked the hanger inside and started scratching it again. Sergeant Roebuck? His chin came up by my use of his title. Yes, girlie. It's none of my business, but I think you should stop passing judgment on yourself. On myself? Yes. Haven't you been doing that since you took the duffel bag out of the basement? You said it reminded you of how short life is, but I think you've been using it to torture yourself with the past. Why do you need combat gear? So you can feel guilty about Leo every time you see it? You didn't kill him. The Nazis did. Maybe you need to think about that. The gear is important to me. The helmets, Sergeant Roebuck's face trailed off. Ella. Stop.
Sorry.
And his eyes glazed. My helmet saved me from a bullet once before the sniper. The other one's Leo's. I leaned forward in my chair, anxious to hear more. After he disappeared from the hospital, somebody brought me his helmet, his little black Bible, and a button he'd lost off his uniform. My rescuers thought I was loco because when they hauled me out of the hospital and put me on the plane, I wouldn't let go of Leo's belongings. The way I felt about it, I couldn't bring his body out of Normandy, but I could bring this little part of him back to the States. I sent the Bible to his folks, the buttons with his photo under glass. If Queen wasn't so dang particular, his helmet would be on the dresser instead of in the closet. Maybe it's just as well, I said. In my room, I've got a picture of my parents and one little keepsake, a God's eye. The rest of their stuff is boxed up, out of sight, because it would hurt too much to look at it every day. Sergeant Roebuck folded his hands and twiddled his thumbs. Forward, backward, forward again. Out of the mouths of babes, he grunted. What? You're awful young, girlie, but you've taught this old man a good lesson. Keep a few memories out in the open and store the rest away.